Welcome to Gray Areas for October 29th, 2024, episode 646. A couple moments behind schedule. It was not to get the shake made. Sean was already here.
It wasn't my fault. For
It's
once.
because Discord decided it wanted to float off into the very top of the window where you could just see the bottom of it sticking out. It's dumb as fuck, but it's fine.
Not only was it not my fault, I can't help but notice that not only is Cody not here, Dave is also not here. I like that you showed that, because that, even though that's not Dave's house, it's the metaphor.
Yeah, well, it's
for him not being
it's
here.
Cody's empty chair, and I think that has to count for something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it looks like that camera may have been nudged at some point because that is way off. But we'll deal with that when Cody gets here.
Yeah.
He should be leaving soon because I believe the Dodgers have just lost. So
What a bunch of losers.
yeah. So we'll get started without him. Just a 2% chat today. No, they'll be here, both of them eventually. And we'll switch to the fourth shot when that happens. But Cody's finishing. He was hoping to see the Dodgers win the title tonight. Nope.
Peter, it can't be 2-person chat because you're here. You're always with us in spirit.
Yeah, but no shakes.
And in chat. It would be weird to do an election preview, even though that's exactly what we're gonna do, without Dave, because he represents the other side. You know, he the far. He basically stormed the Capitol, so
right.
It's gonna be strange. It's gonna kind of feel like an echo chamber until Cody and Dave get here.
Well, let's start by talking about a thing that he would be here and excited to defend because he's a rich billionaire. We're not really going to talk about the election itself. I have a few things I would say about it, but some of them could potentially get my career ended. So what I want to talk more about is just the political climate in general as we go into this election. Of course, is a week from today. If you haven't voted already, do it. If you're not going to do it in advance, I mean, at this point, you've probably already missed the window to get an early ballot, but make sure you go out and vote on election day. It's important no matter what you're voting for. But I think it's important to talk about a few things. One of them recently, and I'll talk about this now since it's fine to do it without the two of them really, is the LA Times and the Washington Post decision not to endorse a candidate, a subject that I am somewhat qualified to speak on. So let's talk about this real quick. We got a couple messages as far as the Daily Sun is concerned after the two papers had made this decision, and they talked about the fact that it was for the best because newspaper endorsements aren't as culturally relevant, because it was harming a newspaper's integrity as far as its ability to deliver hard news when you have an opinion branch that is doing these type of things with endorsements. And I'm here to say that's a load of bullshit.
Well, yeah, and in the Washington Post, weren't they going to? And then Bezos was like, no, don't.
Correct. And it was the same thing with the Times' owner as well a couple days before that. Now, to be clear, at the Daily Sun, I, as the editor since 2018, continued the previous editor's decision towards the end of his tenure to not do endorsements for some of the reasons that people have talked about here. I do think it is something that you can't afford to half-ass, so you have to really put in some time and research to make sure you're putting out the most informed opinion you can, because there is a lot writing on it, maybe less than 60 years ago. But you hit on the main point right away. It's the fact that it was not the Times' decision as far as the editorial staff was concerned. It was not the Washington Post decisions. It was their ownership. And that is where the problem is. If the Times or the Post had decided not to do it for some of the reasons we've talked about, fine. Great. But they didn't, and that's a massive problem.
Yeah, I saw a post that was like, maybe having 4 billionaires in charge of all of our news and social media is not a good call.
Yeah, because Elon Musk has been borderline election interfering constantly by just being like, oh yeah, do this and I'll give you money. And you're like, is that legal? Can you just... doesn't feel like that should be legal. So we have Elon Musk and Twitter, which we're not going to call X, and that whole debacle. And like you said, two pretty powerful folks, especially Bezos, because the Times is smaller than the Washington Post. The Washington Post still has a national footprint, kind of like, the Wall Street Journal, the USA Today, whatever. So that's the biggest issue for me, was people being a little short-sighted on it. Like, well, maybe newspapers shouldn't be doing it anymore. And it's like, look, if they had chosen, fine, because we did, and I don't regret it. I think it was the right decision not to do it anymore. But it wasn't their choice.
Well, and they had staff resign over it. Quite a few, actually. At least the Post did. So clearly they're out of sync. Yeah, it's wild. But that's the Yeah, exactly, Peter. Nothing can go wrong.
Nothing can go wrong with
We
that
should
much
just
power.
have, in fact, we should recuse ourselves as a society. We just let these 4 people, just let the billionaires hash it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they'll do what's best for everybody.
Yeah. And yes, the Times editor, opinion editor, resigned. Multiple people from the Post resigned. The Post supposedly has lost something like 200,000 subscribers. The Times maybe like 10K, but they had a lot fewer than the Post did, so it's tough to compare. So, people have made their displeasure with that decision known, but I don't know. And Bezos had a pretty weak response in an editorial that he put in there after the fact, because there was a lot of backlash, and the main thing was like, well, I stand by it 100% because no one would have a vote changed by a newspaper anymore. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. And I'm not saying that because I'm in the business. We have a dwindling impact on society in general because there's a lot fewer readers than there used to be. But we have a local series that we do of asking city council questions to the people that are running for that office. And it's extremely well read. And a lot of people tell me it's what they use to make an informed decision about council members because they might only get like one debate and they don't really have a platform to read about these people. It's a much smaller scale. But the point is still, people still care about that stuff. Not as many as before, but the idea that Bezos thinks that no one's vote would be swayed by them shows how out of touch he is.
Well, and he is out of touch because he doesn't even believe that. Because if he really didn't think it was any impact, then just let it ride, right? If it doesn't matter, who cares? Why feel the need to go override it? Well, it's because that you're lying is why.
Yeah.
So
we haven't really touched on politics at all. We don't do it a ton, but we do it when it's necessary. But we usually do some kind of episode before the election. And a lot has happened since we essentially only talked about the 2 major things that happened a couple months ago, which was Trump being shot at and Biden abruptly dropping out of the race later than any candidate in history. We haven't really touched on Kamala Harris, a little bit in one of the episodes, but to me, my biggest takeaway from all this was just that Biden would have lost in a landslide. I don't actually know what's going to happen next week. I think it's going to be close. I think no matter how close it is or who wins, there's going to be accusations of fraud. But at the very least, I think Kamala has a chance, and I think Joe Biden had absolutely none.
I don't... it seems like he did not. Now, I won't say anything because we're either going to find out that, yeah, it was really close, and we're going to be I'm going to be disappointed, or we're going to find out no, like Trump already lost, and it was a sign that the winds were changing, and he, was going to lose again. I think with Biden's mental gaffes constantly, it was a real question though, for sure.
And it's telling because Trump is going through the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And this is just what happens as you get older. It's not ageist to say the fact that you can look at Trump speak back in 2016 when he took office, and the difference between then and now is very similar to the difference between Joe Biden 8 to 10 years ago and where he is now.
Yeah.
And even more so over the last 2 or 3 years in particular. So it's been a little bit troubling just to see everybody be like, well, Biden was too old, but Trump isn't. And it's like, Trump was the oldest person to be inaugurated, and that was 8 years ago. He was the oldest ever president. And now if he were to win again, he would be, again, the oldest ever president by another 8 years.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's hard because I don't even care about talking policy because, like, there are certain economic approaches I think that conservatives have that I'm like, I can see some sense in that. Hi, Dave. And yet I think we're not even close to being able to talk policy because of what conservatives represent right now. And in case I forgot, I was reminded with whatever that event was last week. I don't even know what the event was. I just know a bunch of Republicans got up and were horribly racist and terrible. And I was like, that's right. That's why, like, it's not even a decision. I would love to debate policy, but it's like, it doesn't fucking matter. Dave, you brought up a great thing about, like, taxes and certain policies that, like, I agree with you, that Democrats are doing, and it might be a slippery slope. And I think that's valid. And I don't think it matters because we're not even there yet. We're not even to the point where we can talk policy, in my opinion. That's all.
Well, we can't hear Dave. This is why the pre-show testing is important.
Sorry,
he has the wrong
Dave,
device selected. Try again, Dave.
My bad. I forgot to switch on my mic.
There
Now
it
can
is.
you hear me? Hello, folks.
Yes.
I'm here. Life is good. No, it doesn't matter what side you're on. You can't talk policy with either side because it doesn't freaking matter. Because if you like Trump, you're a evil human being and a racist and can't even think about anything other than yourself or how you want to oppress people. And if you're a Kamala fan, then you're just a commie who wants to steal everybody's guns. It's like there's no even shot for discourse at this point.
I know,
Which is just awful.
I just think, and again, this is just me, but like with people, can you overlook if you think Trump is best for the country and the economic health and the border policy and international policy and all of that? Can you overlook the fact that he's like a criminal and like borderline rapist and like a racist and all these things, or not? And some people are like, yeah, I hate that he's those things, but I got to do what's best for the country overall. And some people, myself included, are like, yeah, that's a non-starter. Like, no matter what I think, I can't go there because of what that represents, because of the people and the like society that it cultivates. We can't even talk about it.
What gives me pause is
I know. Sorry, I'm coming in hot.
No, you're good. We saw something almost unprecedented over the weekend, and I haven't really been able to wrap my head around what I think about it yet. You probably saw the things that went viral as far as there was like a roast comedian at the event at Madison Square Garden who called like Puerto Rico a floating pile of garbage in the middle of the ocean, and a bunch of other pretty like xenophobic and flat out racist remarks, to the point where obviously there were some people like, well, it's just a joke and whatever. The Trump campaign disavowed those jokes. The Trump campaign over the last 9 years has not disavowed fucking anything.
Mm-hmm.
They have stood by everything that almost anybody that either Trump himself or connected to the administration has said over the past 9 years. So I guess I'm a bit confused if it's just them. Yeah, the Kill Tony guy, Peter says, and that's correct. That's the one, the guy from the podcast. I'm just not really sure if it's like, oh shit, even in a place like Pennsylvania, Puerto Ricans make up 4% of the population and we maybe can't afford to lose that 4% because that's a swing state. Or if I was sort of stunned because I'm not surprised to see a handful of people push back, but for the Trump campaign itself to put out a statement that they thought it was too far, I'm like, that's the fucking line? We've had all these other lines we've jumped over repeatedly to this point, including like in the previous campaign back in 2015 when he mocked the disabled reporter.
Yeah,
could have been a campaign ender for any candidate.
Yep.
And yet this one was the one that was too far, and it makes me wonder what the thought process was behind it.
It's amazing how all of any possibility of good gets lost in the shuffle because it's so easy to make it a target. You know what I mean? Like, you invite a comedian who tells risque jokes who is going to go over horribly at an official rally. Like, why? What's the point? You're not helping your campaign. You're only hurting it. So what are you doing? Except you have a brashness that your base is that set, I guess. I don't understand it because I know there are certain aspects of policy that happened in 2016 to 2020 that I believe were good in some instances. There's something called the Qualified Opportunity Zone, which I don't know if anybody knows about. Look it up. It was a great way to inject money into lower income areas. And no one knows about it because it was a good policy, but no one knew about it because it didn't really get any traction. Yet it's so easy to mock, like, oh, this horrible racist joke was told because they keep shooting themselves in the foot. I just can't figure it out.
Doesn't that bring us full circle, though? By the way, Cody's here. I'm going to let him sit down. But
you can just walk in. It's fine. I'll just switch the shot.
In a
Ready?
way, that brings
Boom.
us full circle, right? Because you just brought up a great point. And I know this wasn't exactly the point that you were making, but, like, doesn't that just double down what I said about, like, I can't even intelligently talk about, like, policy or debate it because of where we're at. And the thing that I want to ask Dave, and I don't know if we know this because we weren't watching, I'm really curious. I should have done more research. What was the crowd's response to the jokes? Were they outraged?
Uproarious laughter.
Right. That was my suspicion. So that's part of my problem. And Dave, I think it's valid to say, like, you can't vote your candidate based on, like, their followers. And I think that that's fair, but I also kind of am doing that because we've seen such an increase in they're emboldened, right? And I think another 4 years of Trump is just going to push that even further. That's my concern.
Those
Dave's
people
thinking,
exist regardless.
If you're listening to the podcast.
I mean, those people exist regardless. I know what you're saying about being emboldened, but those people exist no matter who is president, and maybe they will be a little bit louder, but it's not like they're going to change their mind because Kamala's president versus Trump. Like, they're not changing their mentality because of something like that. The only thing that changes people's mentality is actually reaching across the aisle and speaking to each other. And I'm trying to find the exact quote of it. Strange enough, Andrew Cuomo had a fantastic explanation that I saw. I was on a podcast recently, basically saying, like, yeah, don't think Trump supporters are all the racist people. They're just basically like, I think you said it earlier, Sean, of like people who may vote for Trump are the guys who hold their nose and say, like, yeah, I don't like how awful you are, but it's a dirty job, so somebody's got to do it. So I'd rather have a dirty guy do a dirty job almost.
Right.
And so they hold their nose and say, okay, I guess I'll do it, because the alternative isn't good in their mind.
And I have family members, and I won't go any further than this, but I'll say I have family members who are like, man, we have way too much diversity. And then I have family members that are like, I really feel strongly about the fiscal policies. I wish Trump would stop talking. I wish he wasn't basically a piece of shit. But like, I think it's good for the country. So there's that divide. But it's those family members that are like, yeah, I hate, what's up with all the women stuff? Can't we just like put them back where they belong? And it's like, yeah, that's my concern. Those people.
I had a family member who said, what's with all the gay stuff?
Great.
So almost a different verbatim example.
Yeah, awesome.
That's an ignorance thing at that point. I mean, that's just a lack of even trying to understand any issue, I think, at that point. Anyone who says something like that along those lines.
I think, to me, it's difficult to say what would be my highest priority. There's definitely something to be said for Sean's point about the fact that it's basically like a megaphone of sorts for a base that felt underrepresented, and maybe the world was better off that way. However, to me, and maybe this is just because of my position, I'm sort of sick and tired of the assault on the truth. Because to Dave's point, it's difficult to have a political discourse whatsoever, because it's not even that people are so divided that there is no middle ground, which is the case, and it's the whole reason for the existence of this current title for our podcast. We've moved past the ideologies being too split. Now the problem is we can't even agree what a fact is.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2 + 2 is 4. Well, I think it's 5. It doesn't fucking matter what you think. 2 + 2 is 4. But if we can't even agree on that, then we have nowhere to go from there, because if the facts can't be established, the opinions have no shot.
And how hard was that to allow people to even start that discourse when, unfortunately, what happened during COVID, where the messaging of vaccines was horrible. It was, get this vaccine and you're going to be cured and safe. Well, get it and you'll be safer, but you can't transmit it. No, but I guess you get, like, what happened, and there are valid reasons for this as far as how it happened. It got rolled out fast, so there's valid reasons behind it, so I'm not denying anything of it, but the messaging was so, yep, this is it, and then it didn't happen, and just leads all this doubt to people and think like, oh, they're lying to us. This is like, that's a trick. They're gonna put microchips in us, you know?
Sure. But there's also a camp of people, for real, honestly, who think that Joe Biden died about a decade ago. And this
idiots.
is a new Joe Biden. So I don't know. And that's the part that makes me stumble. And of course, it's funny that can I remember this point? You brought up, it reminded me of 1984. You brought, I think I'm going to get there. The 2 + 2 equals 5. And you're like, well, no, it's 4. That was in that book. And it reminded me, we talked about the emboldening these people, and like, yes, they exist, but in 1984, one of the things that they do is they take away certain words. And it's like, you can still think these thoughts, but if you don't have the word to convey it, it becomes very hard to like go down that road and take the next step. And I think that's how I feel about these emboldened crazy people. Is like, yeah, they're going to exist no matter what. But with Kamala, they are rightfully sort of called out. And with Trump, they're sort of January 6th leading, like it's like, yeah, you're all out there and I'm with you and you're good people. And actually, if you can all go to the Capitol right now, that would be great. So that's like the difference. You're right. They're going to be there no matter what. But I think it's the difference between like knowing that they want to kill people and handing them the gun to do it.
That's tough. I sound like a complete Trump defender because I'm not.
You do. I was
What?
going to mention that, but I'm glad you got there first.
No, it's just I have tried to see things from both sides as much as I humanly can because I think that's important more than anything. And when there are things that come out, like when Kamala says at the debate where, oh no, Trump said that everybody on both sides was, the both sides thing, fine people on both sides thing. If you look at the entire quote, he actually specifically condemned like the white nationalists on there, which he just, again, did in his Trump rambling way, which no one has a freaking clue what he's saying. And that's why it's so easy. So but then there's things that come out that I see with people posting on social media that's like, oh yeah, I need to make sure to vote for Kamala because I'm afraid that I can't get a checking account next week. And it's like, okay, we had 4 years of Trump. That didn't happen. Why are you trying to aggrandize these things when you have many, many, many other things to attack so easily? Why do you have to make it bigger?
That's been the weirdest part of the discourse of the last 15 years because this really started when Barack Obama was in office and there was a lot of opposition from Fox News at the time, right? Tan suit, etc. Nonsensical policy, not existent, like all these things that didn't make sense, right? Because now, if Obama was the worst thing ever, we lived through 8 years of that presidency. We lived through 4 years of Trump's presidency. We're about to finish 4 years of Biden's presidency. And sure, some people would say, this part of it is worse than ever. The country's still pretty much the same. And your day-to-day life is relatively unchanged, if you're being honest with yourself. Yes, some people have been more marginalized or affected than others. I'm not trying to downplay that. But for the most part, people's day-to-day lives are pretty similar because it turns out the political discourse at a national level doesn't affect your day-to-day life or what you do in your communities. But instead, it's constantly this fear-mongering that both sides do, where it's, oh, it's the worst thing ever. The world's going to end. It's going to be fire and brimstone and locusts, and we're all going to fucking die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that one, too. How many times I've heard this will be the death of democracy. They actually did a supercut. Fox News did, because I still listen to them. And they did the supercut of all the people saying if Trump wins, that will be the death of democracy.
Yeah, democracy's already dead, by the way. I hate to tell you, but like, you see how gerrymandered as shit everything is, and each party has stolen certain areas of the country and this and that, and then they like things don't flip. None of it fucking matters. I don't mean to be like totally like oblivious things, but I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
Well,
because
I mean, to be very clear,
viewpoint,
we're about to have an election where 7 states are going to decide this.
Exactly.
42
so what the fuck does
to
it matter?
43 states, our outcomes are already known as we speak.
So depending on your viewpoint, it's either it's going to be totally fine or it's already dead, and this isn't going to change anything.
Yeah.
And like,
I would argue it's fucked no matter what.
Right.
Kamala can win, and everyone's going to say the election was fake, rigged, blah, blah, blah. We'll spend another year debating whether she actually won or not, and people will fucking get angry, and some people will be in danger, like we had the fucking Capitol storm, so some shit will happen like that. And then someone in the Republican Party, these messaging, this hatred of trans and gay people is going to go away because Kamala wins. No, people are still going to fucking keep getting marginalized and they're just going to amp up we fucking hate these people. We can't believe they fucking get to do this and that. And if Trump wins, the Democrats will still have to sit there and say, look at how marginalized some people are. And some people are definitely going to be marginalized. And those rights will probably be taken away. And that won't be great. And the Supreme Court, but again, I think if Kamala could fucking win, the Supreme Court still is fucking conservative. What the fuck does it matter?
That's exactly what Peter said that I was waiting to pop up. And I've been saying this to folks recently as well when they've been asking me, like, well, what do you think is going to happen in the election? And I said, I don't know, but unless Supreme Court justices start dying, it's not going to matter. Because the biggest thing that happened in Trump's administration was his ability to put 3 justices on the bench in the Supreme Court. Nothing he did during his 4 years in power is going to have anywhere near the lasting impact of being able to name justices for 20 to 30 years that are going to serve on the bench and sway the court conservative. Exactly. That was the byproduct of the 2016 election. It wasn't a Hillary thing or a Trump thing. That was what changed a lot of what's happening in the country, specifically with Roe v. Wade, and now the abortion matters that are going before the states.
And then the rollbacks of a bunch of things that say, like, you can't, I'm not going to need to fucking get into every single one of them, but like, yeah, the Supreme Court's landed more conservative on just about every single judgment it's had. And that's what's been changing the country. Not really what either president's necessarily doing one way or the other. Like, so, I mean, it sounds like a really negative view of it, but I'm just like, Kamala can win and everyone's still going to be pissed and they're still going to ramp up their hatred of stuff. And Trump can win and everyone can say it's doomsday, this and that. And we'll just see how many more justices retire or die and how many more of those. And then our country's affected for 30 years because of that. More than anything Trump's going to do in his 4 more years of being president.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so to keep score here, I definitely like lean pretty far left. I think Chris is pretty in the middle, right? Pretty neutral, maybe a little bit
pretty
left,
down the
but
middle.
Pretty in the middle.
If you had to say, given the current state of the Republican Party, I am probably slightly left, but
Right.
I'm independent for a reason. And I
Cody's
always say
like
fiscally conservative, socially democratic.
Sure. Cody's like, fuck it all. Just fuck it all.
He's an
I just
anarchist.
think that I straight up think that our democracy isn't a fucking democracy,
Yeah.
and it hasn't been a democracy
Well,
for years and years and years. No matter what bullshit the
it's
two
never
parties
been,
want to
actually.
spew to you, it's not
Yeah.
fucking real.
Right.
It doesn't fucking matter.
Now, Dave, if you're a Republican, now it's funny because we always talk about this. I actually don't have an issue with you being a Republican. The only reason I neg you all the time is because you maintain that you're not, and yet you seem like you are. If you are, that's fine. It's great. I'll support you.
Is it fine if that's actually the case? Because that's not the gist you get from anywhere if you go out on social media whatsoever.
I'm aware of that.
Here's
That's
the
why.
thing.
That's why I'm telling you.
Are
though.
you like 70s Republican where you just want to have like conservative spending and the normal discourse we used to have and then not the that person shouldn't be able to live and that person's a fake woman and that person's gay and all the awful parts of that I don't know why that's part of the actual conversation between the two parties, but we need to white men need to marginalize everyone because it's the right thing to do.
This is the problem, is that anyone, let's say, you're in the middle here and, you're pretty much a middle type of person. Maybe you're let's say center right, in 1994, you were center right. Now you are, I guess, a little left, depending on how far the Republican Party went over. On the flip side, though, if you were center left in 1994, with how far the Democratic Party's gone left, you're kind of almost center right at this point because it's so skewed.
I literally believe that's what our current president and the woman running for president actually are. I don't think they're like in the new version of what like the super like liberal socialist side of the Democratic Party is. I think you're exactly right. The people that are running for president are not really super left Democrats. They're fucking moderates. That's because that's the only way the Democrats are going to get anyone fucking elected as president in this country.
Well, then that's always the thing, right?
Exactly.
You gotta go super far left for the primaries, and then you come back to the middle.
Exactly. You say all this bullshit and speak. Okay, again, I don't really give a fuck who. I mean, at this point, because none of this is going to change how much my rent is, which is the thing that's affected me the most in the last 20 years of my life, is my rent and not being able to buy a house. That's pretty much like the main thing as a white man that has affected me. I'm very well aware how fucked a lot of other people can be if a certain party comes into power when all I've watched for the last 5 days are "we hate trans people" ads, and that's the only thing I'm seeing on TV.
Yeah. Now, Dave, you asked me just to return to it. I personally, I do mean it. If you were like, yeah, guys, I'm registered Republican, I'd be like, okay, we can disagree on some stuff, but like, I'm not going to be like, you're a piece of shit. I think that's, now if you come out and you're like, I hate all trans people, then, maybe we'll have a different discussion. But like, it goes back to that. I've talked about this before, that girl in my creative writing class, which I still think is so funny that everyone had like a breakdown. And I get that it was not what we wanted, but they like took a moment of silence the next day. Class was shut down. And I was like, guys, like, it's okay. Anyways, she just said, like, I don't think this is helpful to come at it from a perspective of all Republicans are evil. Like, that's not going to help them come to our side, certainly. And it's just like, it's not good for discourse. It's not good for anything. We're not going to understand where they're coming from. Nothing. And pretty much everyone in the class, like, just ignored her. Did not like that she had to say that. And I thought it was pretty reasonable from her that she was saying that.
Isn't it insane? Like, and there's something actually on the Bill Maher show, which is funny because Bill Maher has always been such a liberal and he's almost a conservative now, the way he talks. It's weird. He's still in like Trump, but just the way he talks now, he's almost more conservative. He had Don Lemon on the show and Don said basically like, hey, if you tell white males that they're evil and they're horrible and are harming the country and are doing all these awful things, maybe you aren't going to connect with them so well. It's almost, again, explaining why people might support that side when you ostracize a group like that. It kind of sucks, but it's true.
Yeah.
So telling everybody that you're evil is a sure way not to connect with them, isn't it?
Yeah. Cody, were you here when I said like the guy, the actor from Bob's Burgers, it was just sentenced to like
He's going to jail.
in prison. Yeah. And he was just having a great time with it. Probably why he's going for a year is, for example, he dressed up as the shaman guy for Halloween, did not seem contrite at all. And the judge was like, hey, I don't think you're taking this seriously. Go to jail.
Sure.
And that's the approach that a lot of them have had. It's been exaggerated. It's not that bad. And then you hear the leaked audio where they talk about they want to storm the Capitol and hang everyone from the gallows.
Yeah.
And you're like, that sounds like it's not exaggerated. It sounds like you wanted to kill everyone there.
They fucking did. I don't know.
Like,
I don't know why that's a debate anymore. And I'm not even sitting here and say like Trump specifically text them all, go kill everyone. I'm not going to fucking say that. The group of people that showed up that believe they're marginalized because they believe an election was stolen, they believe their vote didn't count. They showed up because there is rhetoric that says and leans it both ways. And again, yes, to Dave's point, when you sit there saying this entire party is the devil and all hell people, yeah, they're going to get a little bit more pissed off at you. So granted, and in this day and age of we can say whatever the fuck we want and then violence doesn't seem to really matter, yeah, they're going to show up and try and kill everybody. I mean, they killed someone there. Like, someone did die. I think that also, because it was only one life, it's not as big of a deal. Well, it could have been worse. It's like, well, one person did die, and that person's family lost someone, so that's kind of shitty, by the way, but...
Yeah, and it was, they were saying they want to hang everybody by the gallows, and I imagine, even if somebody was like, hey, like, cut it. He then, like, went, and they're like, yeah, we're going to have rows 4x4 of people hanging so that it never had, like, he went into specifics. It wasn't like an idle fucking thought.
And we saw another example of that this week, or I guess this past week, with the enemy of the people stuff, and I don't know, I guess it was funny because you had Trump making these remarks about, is he going to turn the military on Democrats or not and all this stuff. And do I think he really means that? No. I think in general, Trump and his fucking dumbass weave, as he calls it, just gets away from himself in sentences sometimes and doesn't know where he's gotten himself into 30 seconds later. But then we have Republicans going on TV being like, nah, he didn't really mean that. And then the next day, Trump's like, I actually really did mean that. And you're like, oh, what? But you...
Yeah.
But what's happening? But instead, because the media is so... I'm part of the media, but I mean like the mass TV media folks, we're all focused on his McDonald's stuff and all this other nonsense that doesn't mean jack shit.
I also do find it really funny that the Democrats are so fucking desperate to make sure he doesn't win. They want to put a bunch of people who are Republicans who in Kamala's ads are, I'm a Republican and I voted for Trump twice, but I won't do it this time. It's like, so these people you're now using for your political ads, despite the fact that they're fucking terrible people that voted for Trump twice.
Yeah.
But you're so desperate to get elected, you wanted to throw them in the ads, and that's your like Trump card, comically to use the term. And I have found that to be bullshit. And so like the more and more of these ads I watch on both sides, I'm like, I don't want to fucking vote for either of you. You're both pissing me off
2020
so much.
That same thing happened in 2020.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I can't handle this anymore.
And I did laugh because one of the guys was like, I didn't voted for him twice. I'm like, okay, so you didn't care about all the bad shit of like, trans, gay, marriage, abortion, all that. You didn't care. And the Democrats don't care because they still want to put this fucker in the ad, but he won't vote now because he's worried that taxes will get too high. And I'm like, that's really what you're doing, Democratic Party? You want to vilify them for how this party treats people who you want to vote for you, but then you're willing to put a guy who voted for that person that put those people on the Supreme Court in your fucking ad. And that's where you're going to go and have him say, well, I voted for him twice, which means he helped enact the policies you shit on and are advertising to those people, but you're trying to play both sides of it. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck this.
I want to know who saw Trump at McDonald's and was like, man, I was on the fence, but
he's a man of the people.
He cares about me.
As he gives me E. coli onions, I'm super pumped.
Yeah. In this deeply polarized political system of today, the idea that they keep trying to find these undecided voters is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
It'd be really funny if it wasn't so damn sad, because it's like, if you are an undecided voter, you must be so blissfully unplugged as to be an idiot.
Yep.
Yeah, who woke up 2 weeks ago and was like, I guess that presidential election's coming up. I better start taking that shit seriously and figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I taught like the family members that are like,
James just done.
Yeah.
They're gonna vote Republican, and it doesn't matter who. Now, the thing that drives me crazy is you'll get people like my dad, my family. Actually, my dad is a good example. He was the good example I was talking about before. But you'll get people like, they'll be like, well, I don't care about Trump. You have to look past the politician, right? Like, you have to look at the policies. It's more about that. And they'll be like, but this Kamala, what a stupid bitch. And you're like, you just said you can't look at him. What do you mean?
Isn't that what? That's what I try to do every single time is ignore the person so much. I try to be like, this is the policy. Here's what I don't like about Kamala when I've talked about the unrealized capital gains tax, something like that, or rent controls or something like that. There's legitimate criticism you can give about the plans on each side. There's like very legitimate criticism that you can put depending on what your beliefs are of what's going to be best for the nation. Yet all we can focus on is Trump rambles and says a bunch of bullshit. Kamala has a cackle like, oh man, that's the biggest thing about her. It's like she laughs really weird, or she stumbles over her words, or isn't the greatest public speaker. Okay, well, what's the policy? What's going to be enacted? How are you going to work with Congress? You know, that's what matters.
Like exactly, because like my whole point of like, which way do I want to vote? Well, I got like a couple questions. Which one? Okay, because I believe that abortion should be okay. Oh, well, I probably have to just vote for that fucking party. Like, I'm just shit out of luck. There's no like actual policy of like, how are we going to spend our money? How are we going to approach this and that? That doesn't exist anymore because we've pushed all the social issues into this two-sided thing. It's like, well, if I want some certain groups of people to not be treated like shit, I don't really have a choice on who to vote for.
And I am extremely resentful of that fact because I don't really think Democrats did a great job these last 4 years.
No,
overall.
I agree.
So, but then, Cody, the only thing you missed is like, I can't overlook what the Republican Party like stands for right now. And so I can't vote for there. But I wasn't saying that means, Dave, you suck. I was just saying like as a personal judgment value, I can't do that. I tie it too much together.
Can't either. I don't even get it. What the Republican Party stands for at this very moment fucking sucks. Like, and the hard part is because so much of what I agree with when it comes to fiscal conservativeness and the idea that people can do what I'm very much libertarian. I'm not a registered Republican at all. I'm very much libertarian in the ideals of libertarian, not the bullshit that libertarianism has become. Like, the idea is, hey, if you want to go do something you want to do, as long as you don't hurt somebody else, that's all that matters. And so the idea is don't pay a bunch of taxes, don't have a bunch of government services because you go do what you want to do and you float or sink based on what you do. Now, I understand the idea of having social services. I actually like the idea of having the state-run local social service because I think it runs a lot better than a national one because a lot of red tape and shit that happens and bloat. That happens. So that's my political ideology. What the Republican Party went from that, what I believed it used to be 20, 30 years ago, to, yeah, gays suck. Man, we can't have all these brainwashing trans. Like, no, like, that's absolutely ludicrous. That's not what conservatism is. It's about letting you go do what you want to do.
And this is where like I totally agree with Dave, because again, if it wasn't for the way capitalism works of, well, did we really need social services like 50 or 60 years ago? No, because things worked well and certain people weren't like hyper psychotic rich and people weren't like paid dog shit amount of money to where then all the wealth, blah, 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 all the shit we've gone over. We didn't really need social services in the same manner we need today because the gap in money and all that shit has gotten so wide. Yeah. Now the government's left to be like, well, I guess we were a capitalistic country and we kind of let that get out of hand and now it got fucked. It's just a cycle of how, I mean, this sounds really like dumb, but like it's the cycle of how these governments and shit work in all of our history and all that. We're just more modernized. So we haven't seen one cycle into, cool, capitalism works really well. This is really great. And then, oh, we cycled too far and now we have to help certain people because those people got kicked out of whatever bullshit and this and that. And people who are rich got super more rich and all that crap. But Dave's exactly right. Like I that's where I'm like actually am more conservative of like, did we need to get into this position? No, but we fucked ourselves like 50 or 60 years ago, and that's now here we are.
Meanwhile, while we're saying all this, the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show, the new Rush Limbaugh show, they spent 2 days.
I don't even know who those people are.
2 days.
Wait, isn't Clay Travis a sports person?
Yeah, he used to be.
Oh, he's not anymore. Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah, and they bring it up all the time. They spent two full days on if you vote. Basically, to sum it up, voting liberal is very womanly, and voting conservative is very masculine. 2 days on the masculinity of voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And so that's to your point, Dave. You're like, I want to have like these fiscal discussions, and they're like, yeah, if you're voting for Kamala, you're probably wearing spandex and playing the flute. 2 days on this one topic.
Right. In 2024, this isn't 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's intentional now. And that's the hard part I struggle with is I just finished my ballot last night. And I didn't vote any straight ticket. I never do. I voted for a few Republicans. I might have voted for a couple more Republicans if I didn't have to sit there and think to myself, man, a legitimate portion of this base believes the idea that kids are being sent to school and having sex surgeries done to them and coming home a different gender than they were when they left for school that morning. And that's not like hyperbole. That's not rhetoric. Some people actually believe that is the case. As if that makes any fucking sense. Because it used to be like, the attack a few years ago, maybe even like 10, 15 years ago, was like, oh, you're going to get brainwashed at the universities, right? Like, that's where you go to get radicalized, and it's all this free thinking and all this stuff. We have skipped several steps past that now. So forget getting radicalized or having your viewpoints changed. Now your kids' genitals are going to get mutilated at schools because you wouldn't notice that. That's not like a major surgery they would come home from and have some noticeable impact on. People actually believe that. Yeah. And not a small, insignificant portion. And that's the part I have a hard time with.
I mean, again, maybe I was speaking out of turn. I just feel like a lot of that started from you. Every school shooting we had, that had to be a conspiracy theory. And then that, like, one conspiracy theory from that led to another conspiracy theory, led to another conspiracy theory to where you just doubt everything.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we can go back to fucking 9/11, honestly, and just start diving into when did conspiracies go from being like, oh, you're just kind of, you're loony because you believe the conspiracy theory to
we didn't land on the moon.
Yeah, exactly. To like, wait a minute, the conspiracy theories are actually like 50% of the population and are deciding our elections. Like somewhere in the last 20 something years, we flipped to where it went from you're insane and you're full of shit to no, maybe you actually have a point when you talk about we're all the actors and when the kids got shot at school. It's just bizarre shit.
Isn't it all the discourse though? The vilifying of anyone who doesn't believe the exact same way you do? Because if someone like me who will say like the idea of I'm trans adult, if you want to change your gender, sex, whatever, that's on you. Your choice. I'm very much like whatever you want to do. However, I will say up front, I don't like the idea of kids doing it at all. Even if the kid says they want to, if my kid came to me and said, hey, I feel like I'm an opposite gender, I'd support them in every way I could. There's no surgery that's happening until they're an adult because you're growing up still. And I don't think that having that a point is anti-trans at all. Because once you're an adult and make your own decisions as an adult, okay, that's what you want to do. Go do what you want to do. You're an adult. But that feels like that argument is anti-trans, and I am not an ally at all because I have that opinion about kids. And yet, therefore, then if that you get ostracized or something, that's like, fuck it. All right, I'm just going to be anti-trans completely because they're insane. Like that's kind of what some people have, and that leads down this whole path of conspiracy theories.
But that was too good of an example because you could have said the same thing about if you play the Harry Potter game, you're not an ally, and it's like, come on, guys, like. Let's be reasonable.
Yeah, playing those games where then you like take a deeper dive into like, you know, when you go buy gasoline or like Cheerios or whatever, you know what company you're supporting or blah, blah, blah.
You get to the good place debate.
Yeah, do you want to go down that road of like, hey, guess what? Everyone's going to hell. There actually is no heaven. We're all going to hell because there's only hellish things to support. Because like, I mean, Dave's example you're like, is so fucking good of an example of like, I think if I had kids and they were like 10, 11 years old and they're like, you know what, I think I identify more as a female than a male. I'm like, all right, well then let's actually start dressing you not fully like a boy then. So be it. I hope you don't get picked on at school. I will do everything I can to make sure that's the case. And once you get to 18, 19, let's have a deeper conversation about where we need to go with that. I'm 100% with Dave on that. And if that makes me not quote unquote an ally, I'm really sorry, but like, we don't let fucking 11-year-olds drink alcohol for a fucking reason. We have a lot more restrictions on less impactful things long term than having gender reassignment surgery. Yeah. Like,
well, and that I think is the thing is like if you're, God, when do I'm gonna like date myself because I was gonna say 12. Do 12-year-olds, are they interested in boys and girls? Is that too young?
I feel like 11. I feel like 11, 12 is when you kind of start
around there.
So if I have a daughter and she's like, I'm interested in girls, I'd be like, cool, that's great. I'll support you in every way. There's nothing. Not that I think she's lying or confused, but like, there's nothing permanent. There's no surgery. There's no nothing
because 1 year later that she could say, you know, actually, I'm really interested in boys. You're like, okay, cool, awesome,
great. And if you're not, and that was it, and you're in for girls, the whole great.
So
Because
it's
nothing. Yeah, there's no risk.
But that makes you a moderate, maybe leaning conservative, Sean. I
Don't
hope
even
you're
say
aware of that.
No.
You and
no.
Dave are actually the same now.
I actually don't.
Register public with me, Sean. Come on, let's do it.
I don't actually agree with that. I think there are radical left.
Oh, yo,
And
for sure.
I think that they would believe that. I think it's pretty accepted. I
100%.
think
I'm being a
on
smart
the
ass.
left. I know it,
yeah.
but it's it makes you stop and think.
Because
So,
there
and
are,
I know you're kidding, but
yeah,
like, it's
because
like,
there
well,
are there is a 5% portion or whatever of the party that would say, oh well, if you're not letting which is really funny because you know what that is? That's a very fucking libertarian outlook of, well, we should let the kids do whatever they want. You know what else? You don't let people do whatever the fuck they want is the free fucking market Democratic Party. You don't let there be a free market. So why are we letting 11-year-olds decide anything they want?
yeah.
Chuck
Yeah.
Rock
It's fucking double standard all over the place. I swear to God.
Mm-hmm. Chuck Rock mentioned Alex Jones, and the last thing I'll say, because we mentioned the conspiracy theory angle, it is remarkable that between Alex Jones's $1.5 billion settlement and Dominion and Fox News's almost $800 million settlement, we have two landmark cases as far as like defamation and spreading lies and misinformation that have resulted in pretty massive sums of money. And yet, as I look at the current political climate, I wonder to myself, was that amount of money actually worth it? Because, well, that
No,
sounds like
because
it's almost an inconceivable amount of money for, like, we'll never see that money in our lifetimes, any of us, right? But, like, two billionaires, that's nothing, in a sense, for what it bought, which is, like, the seeds of distrust
Yeah.
and planting fake news and undermining democracy. So while it seems like, wow, that was unprecedented and we've never seen fines like that, I'm like, maybe they weren't enough. Maybe they couldn't be enough. Maybe there's no monetary angle that can undo the damage that's been done.
It's almost like a martyrdom at that point, because then the idea is that, oh, you're censoring him, you're shutting him down because he's telling the truth. And that idea is almost more dangerous than the original message, I think, because the original message is easily ignored. But when you shut somebody down, it's like, oh, whoa, why are they shutting him down? He must be he must be onto something. They're trying, the powers are shutting him down. This is why I kind of like the idea of like, fuck it, just say what you want to say. And if you're an idiot, you're going to get called out on it eventually. That's how it kind of tends to work. Yes, you're going to have people that follow you and maybe something bad happens from it. But I think in the long run, when you shut people down, it embodies that subset of people more so than it would otherwise.
You're almost like a capitalist when it comes to the free market of ideas.
Exactly.
Where it's like, yeah,
very much so.
Let people self-select, and if it wasn't for so many of those dangerous people, like the idea of Marjorie Taylor Greene being in Congress is just continuously confusing to me, because it's another candidate where it's like she should never have won in the first place, and she's done so many things that should be disqualifying that it's not even worth listing. I think about like Lindsey Graham, and I'm like, Lindsey Graham used to be relatively not far right, because those words have shifted in the last decade, but he was staunchly Republican. And he has quotes about Trump in the campaign that people keep trying to use against him, and he keeps slithering his way around him because he's like a classic politician, right? He's one of those that, seems nice. He's got that Southern charm, but he'll flip on you in a minute, right? And I'm like, man, Lindsey Graham is also almost a moderate now. And what does that mean for how the dialogue has shifted in this country over the last 10 to 15 years?
The best example I have of that is the fact that Jeff Sessions, probably the most conservative person in the Senate when he was shifted to Attorney General or whatever it was, got run out of the fucking party and out of his job, out of the Trump administration, because he wouldn't do exactly what he was asked, tried to rerun for his seat, and lost to a college football coach because Trump loved the guy and backed him. Literally the epitome of like ultra conservatism back then, got run off of being a politician because of where the party shifted to of disinformation and these people are scary and dangerous and they're going to take over your lives and world, as opposed to just not wanting caps on things and wanting to not blow money on spending and social services and all that of what the Conservative Party used to be. And they got rid of the guy. He just disappeared from the existence.
Yeah. What percentage of Trump voters do you think are just people that they're just like, fuck the system? They're like, yeah, Trump's not great, but he's chaos. And I don't like where we're going. And let's just blow it all up.
There is some of that.
It's a quarter.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a decent enough percentage.
It was why we haven't heard this from him in a while, but the whole drain the swamp thing was popular for a reason.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not people being evil. It's just getting sick and tired and not seeing a way out of what we're just talking about. This divisiveness, this system, this machine.
Which again, I find funny because Trump's a decent example of the machine you didn't like as a really rich dude who fucked a bunch of people over and then enhanced his own wealth. And it's like, he's kind of the example of the thing you guys don't really like, which I hate to tell a bunch of conservative people, you actually don't like capitalism, was what you're kind of whining about. But
they're confused because they equate his like rambling speech because it's so atypical.
Yes.
They're like, oh, so he's brand new. It's like, well, no, he's just
no, he's 100% he and his family are 100% the creation of what capitalism is and why you don't feel like you have enough and you haven't gotten your fair share, blah, 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 all that crap. And I'm like, yeah, that's because like there's some things that have happened in capitalism and how it works. And yeah, you unfortunately, as a rural farmer, have gotten fucked over the years for a handful of reasons. And then, of course, you get into the religious part of it. That, some of the southern parts are more religious, and then their religion tells them to, hate gay people or whatever it might be.
That is one thing I cannot understand for the life of me, why that has become so intertwined. And I understand the idea that if you're, staunchly religious, and not in the way that I'm religious, because I don't feel that religion has to come with hate or disparaging a group of people. It doesn't have to. They're mutually exclusive. But like, if you're super duper conservative, all of a sudden you're super duper Christian too. It's like, why? Like, that doesn't have to be the case. Yet it's like, oh, those are easy targets though. If I just say I'm super Christian, all of a sudden now I get that whole buy-in of that base. It's like, how stupid are people to not be able to separate politics from religion? It doesn't have to be hand in hand. Yeah. Yet I hear stories of people who are in certain churches that it's like, if you even mention the idea of Kamala or a Democrat, you are just ostracized, which is like, that's weird. I thought religion was supposed to be about gathering and helping people. I
feel like that's somewhat of a function of being a two-party system. One party adopted religion and one is a bunch of heathens who don't believe in God because they let gay people get married and all that crap.
Well, but I think it goes the opposite direction though, right? Because I think the values of Christianity and abortion, let's say, that's the guide. So which political party aligns with that? Well, it's exactly conservative, not necessarily that the Republicans adopted the Christianity, but when they saw, they're like, oh, it's an easy way to win votes, of course. Yeah. I think just to go back to that, I think if you mention Kamala in church, well, you enjoy murdering babies. Mm-hmm. That's the connection there. So it's to the extreme because everything is right.
Right.
But, yeah. Well, isn't that Dave's point of being like more like liberal socially and then conservative fiscally? It's like that party doesn't exist. It's not a party anymore. It's just not a thing.
And then that just brings us full circle, Cody, to the only thing you missed where I was like, I think Dave is right, but the social and everything it represents now is so bad, I can't even overlook it to even have a conversation about that.
And that's how I felt for like 20 years now.
Yeah.
And it is confusing because, as Dave mentioned, like those two should be separate, religion and politics. And yet, as we know, Jesus was famous for ignoring the poor.
Yes.
Following the structure of the government. These are all things that were very prevalent in the Bible constantly throughout. Like, very clear message. Jesus hates everyone.
Everybody.
And yet, so look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we don't have a problem at the border. That's been one of the biggest weaknesses of the Biden administration is that Democrats have not done enough to fix that issue. It's also not as overblown as Trump says it is. This week, he said he thinks there could be anywhere from 23 million plus migrants that have come over the border. And if anybody heard those comments and didn't want to put them in context, here's some context for you. New York has 20 million people. Not city, state. The state of New York has 20 million people. So Trump's trying to have you believe that 23 plus million have spewed in over the border over the last few years, which is more than 500,000 per state. You don't think Rhode Island's going to have noticed if 500,000 people showed up there? Because do you want to know what Rhode Island's population is?
No.
About that.
Well, they are, and they're all rapists, and they're all eating our pets, is what
That's right.
And you know what the flip side of that too is? Because I like to just do the flip side. That doesn't mean that all migrants that come over are wonderful human beings who are trying to just make a better life. Many, many of them are. but that doesn't mean everybody is.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean you can just defend all of them with a broad brush. It's like, why can we not have any discourse about, hey, let's treat them as an individual aspect here, where it's like, hey, if you come over and you want to get a job and work to better yourself, fantastic, let's do that.
Yeah.
But if you come over and commit crimes, it's like, well, okay, that's a problem.
It's the same
you know?
problem. Two sides looking at it from different perspectives that have no middle ground whatsoever, because for some people it's, well, they're in a horrible situation and we need to let them in. It's like, well, there is a reason that legal immigration exists, because our country is only equipped to handle so many at once, and there are other mechanisms for emergency situations, but this is not necessarily that. There's no current situation that's leading all these people to come here in droves, right?
It's
and then
wild
there's the flip side, though, where now legal migrants have been caught up in the sway of this, where now it's like the Haitians that were talked about a lot in Ohio, where it's like, those people are here legally. They paid their dues. They've done the process. You don't get to fuck with them. You don't get to lump them in with other people who are here illegally, but now it doesn't matter to some people because they're all bad. All brown people bad.
Yep.
So I just...
Well, I'm saying it's wild that people of every race commit crimes. I mean, and it's just, who the fuck knew that every single race could possibly commit crimes? White people commit crimes too, and brown people commit crimes too. It's fucking insane that crime happens across all
white people
races.
don't commit crimes.
Do they not?
It's only non-white.
Well, yeah, except for mass shootings, because weirdly enough, it's only white people doing that.
Yeah.
Men
it's only
doing
white
that.
men.
Yeah.
So there's 4 potential shooters in this show apparently right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm Lebanese. But yeah, but then it's just really weird to me, because you look at I get that it was the same teacher in that class that I talked about. She said, my daughter is never going to meet her grandparents because they voted Trump. And I was like, whoa, lady. I know we're disappointed, but that's the type of rhetoric that I don't think is very helpful in decreasing this tension. And it's only that was
See, I might,
years ago.
I might ask them and say, okay, that's interesting. Why are you doing it? And if the answer was, because I fucking hate trans people, I might also decide, you know what, maybe you're not going to meet your grandchildren if that's where we're going to go.
That's fair.
Because I might dive in of but if it's well, I do kind of want to, I want the border to be secure. I don't believe the Democrats are getting done a good enough job. I'm like, all right, I can hear you out on those things.
Context. That's true.
But I do think that the abrupt, blunt, well, just because you voted for them means no way. I'm like, well, let's just ask a couple questions as to why they voted for Trump. And if a lot of it's hate speech stuff, yeah, maybe I don't want to spend a lot of time with them, unfortunately, as family. Or it could be, we think the Democratic Party sucks, which guess what? It kind of does. So maybe that's okay to actually believe.
Yeah. Yeah. And God, I don't know. I'm so family oriented. Even if that was the case, I'd be like, look, we're going to limit the time. We're going to be strategic about it.
We won't bring up these topics when we do spend time.
That's also fair. It's just okay, you can hang out with your grandkid. Maybe don't start asking them if they're gay when they're 5.
I don't want to hear it. And the second I see you're not supportive of something, that's going to be, and they see it, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But no, of course, the pendulum's all the way on whatever side.
Yeah.
And that is a characteristic of all discourse now, which I also don't like.
I found it's amazing. I have my uncle is very far right. He's an older white male. I mean, he fits right into the stereotype, basically. His daughters, he married a Hispanic woman years and years ago, and his daughters are half Hispanic, half white. They're very, very far left, and yet they get along fantastically. They have one of the better, father and daughter relationships that I've seen. And it's they put that aside, what their political views are, because they care about each other's people. And I don't know why that's so fucking difficult to know that maybe you disagree, but that's okay.
There really aren't that many things that separate us.
Yeah.
There really aren't. But
Also,
more and more wedges keep getting driven in between, because that's convenient for the two-party system. That's convenient for the intelligentsia, that's convenient for whoever.
Also, you said he was really, really far right, but he married a Hispanic woman, so your story does not track.
Sean, do you actually have any idea how many Latin people are Christian conservative and say far right?
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
I went for the racist angle, but no, you're right.
No, the thing is, no matter what the Republican Party might have said at that Madison Square Garden thing about how dirty every Latin person is, I did think it was funny because I'm like, you guys know that you have a pretty strong following in the Latin population, right? It's kind of a weird take to go with
Right.
because the ones who grew up here who happen to be brown have been supporting you for decades because they're the conservative kid. Like, I have so many friends that are like Mexican and their families are Catholic,
Yeah.
so they fucking lean more conservative.
Well, there's the black racism as well, and it's like, your guys are desperate to increase the black vote.
Yeah.
And your guy was all, and it wasn't just this guy. There were other people at this thing, and I can't remember what those comments were, but it was just a bad event, and it was such a good reminder for me of like, oh, that's why at this point in time I cannot vote Republican or even can't even approach a conversation about it.
I think until one party starts losing like 5 presidential elections in a row, you're just not going to see, because we always flip back and forth over and over again. So everyone's chasing votes and half-assing it, and they're all like this far apart on most other, like, again, fiscal shit. And then socially, we're all the way over here, and that's what everyone just uses to get elected is, well, if you elect us, we'll make sure these people are safe. And if you elect us, we'll make sure we try to kill all these people and get rid of them out of the country. It's like, all right, cool, that's fucking helpful, guys.
I've talked about this on the show before. I thought we were close to that. Actually, I still think we were close to that when Obama won the second time. I thought we were at that point, and then Trump came out of nowhere with the just radical views. But I thought we were there, and I talked about it. So
I mean, Chris and I have joked multiple times about, oh, look at how contentious Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama was.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, that was a real shitty election, huh? Let's look back at that.
Yep.
Look at Mitt now, and I'm like, Mitt had some pretty solid points at times. Fuck.
It was downright pleasant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, they were shaking hands. It was downright nice.
And honestly, I look back and I wonder if Mitt had won that fucking election and then is then the incumbent Republican president going forward, do we get to where we are? Was Trump eventually coming, or was someone like Trump eventually coming? Or did that second term and then that loss and then, oh my God, Obama won twice and won back-to-back. We're so pissed as we're ramping up a lot of the unfortunate, conspiracy theory stuff at the same time.
I've also wondered to myself, if Hillary wins in 2016 like she should have, I'm not saying like, I just think that should have been the outcome, not like I think she would have been the better president. What happens in 2020? Because once Trump wins the Republican nomination and gets close, I don't feel like that like dissuades him. I think he comes back even harder 4 years later. So I sort of wonder if once he became the nominee, if we were destined to head somewhere along this path. Again, it's different Supreme Court situation, but just as far as the discourse goes, I think once he won the nomination, we were doomed.
And that's what I started off by saying. I don't think anything matters. I think the country is headed towards a shit situation, regardless of who wins. It's just how much shittier does it get for certain people quicker than others in the next 4 years. It's what it feels like no matter what, which is a really sad perspective, I guess, that I have.
Well, and it was. I watched Conclave this weekend. Have you guys heard of that?
No.
I'll talk about it more in a different episode. It's basically the Pope dies, and the weird Vatican thing they do where they all hole up and decide on a new Pope. So it's a movie about that. They're all sequestered and voting, and just at one point they're like, "Is this what it's come to? We have to vote for the least bad option." I was like, what good dialogue, because that's exactly what's happening in real politics.
It's felt like it's been that way. The funny thing is, South Park made a joke about that 20 years ago with Bush and Kerry, where it's like, oh, we got to pick a turd sandwich and a giant douche. It's like, man, those were downright superstars compared to this.
Yeah,
and it's seemingly gotten worse in each iteration down the road. Like McCain and Obama were like, yeah, I mean, McCain had his issues and people were all jazzed up about Obama after Bush. Great, that's fine. But there was not really any contentiousness, and people said how awful it was. I got to pick the worst of two options. Well, now here we are, where it has just gone down and down and down and down and down.
Well, as we said at the top, if you haven't already, vote. It does matter, even if it doesn't in a lot of ways. It still matters in some. And more importantly, it is also your civic duty, just like jury duty. Stop ducking that for dumb excuses, too. But that's coming up next week. As a result, we will not have a show. So just a reminder, there will be no episode next week. My final question is, do you want a tight 10 on the concert, or do you want to hold off?
I mean, probably hold off.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. We got more heat. I went into this not giving a shit, and then it was kind of fun to just talk about. So now I
got here to argue you, right?
What?
I got here to argue against you, right?
Yeah. Dave came and all he wanted to do was argue the whole time. So I thought, okay, I got to switch gears.
Good. Trump 2024. That's what I am, guys. You know that.
Dave, before you got on, I said you basically stormed the Capitol.
Yeah, I stormed your Capitol.
Mm.
Damn.
I don't even know what that means. Is it sexual? I hope it is.
Yeah.
Maybe. Sean, did you want it to be?
Did I want you to? It depends. Let's talk about what you mean. Let's talk about specifics.
Let's break this down. No, let's
If you're
not.
talking about anal, then yes.
Mm. Got him. Got him mid-drink.
I almost made me spit my water out. I didn't expect you to say that. Fantastic.
Yep.
Bravo. I like it.
When we come back from the week off, because I'm going to be really busy on election night, we only basically have 3 shows in November. And then in December, we are doing a 10-year update of our top video game character list, just like we did with the best games ever almost 2 years ago. It's been 10 years. It's time to see how the list has changed, what has risen, what has fallen, what new will enter the fray. So we'll have to try and see about like what else we can get to in that span. Maybe a game show. We have some other stuff coming up, but
We also have a food thing.
we have a
probably.
food thing if Dave is here, which then we also maybe
Dave's not coming.
maybe we record that and air it the week of Thanksgiving.
Dave's not
But
coming.
we'll talk
He
about
is
it off
November
air.
8th.
Dave's not coming.
Are you going to be here?
Dave's not coming.
Are you going to be here?
We'll see if Dave's here.
Yeah,
I'll be here. Dave won't be here.
Okay.
we'll have to talk about the Suns at some point.
Do you think
but-
Dave's
No.
going to be here? He's going to have stormed every capital
I
by the
know.
time before he
I know.
can get here.
But I think that's my
have to
point,
be
though.
out
He
there.
will have stormed it, and then he'll be
No,
able to
he's
come.
going to be hitting capitals all around the
Oh,
country. He's
fuck.
got to go
Right.
state to
I
state.
am going to Cody, you're right. I'm not going to be there. I'm going to have to make sure that the steal is stopped.
Yeah.
All right,
Wow.
November 8th, are you planning to be in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin? I don't know which state you're
Wherever
going to
they need
be.
me most, baby. Wherever they need me
Because
most.
it's easy. I mean, November 6th, it's easy for you to be in Phoenix right away. So just wasn't sure where the plane was going along. I suggest Nevada right after here, and then we'll see
It
where
is
you go from there.
closest.
Yeah,
Okay.
then
Yeah,
like, head to
I'll
like
just make a circle.
head to like Lansing, Michigan, just so it's not clear where you're headed at any time. Just zigzag a little bit to keep the feds off your trail. All right, that's the end of the episode then. Thank you for tuning in. I will not say go sell Zig, sorry, Jack Rock, but they're good. We knew that. We'll talk about the Suns sometime next month. Election day is next week, so we're off. We will see you the week after that on the 12th. In between episodes, you can find us on our website, grayareas.live or youtube.com/@grayareaslive. There's a whole 14 years of material if you're missing us next week. We'll see you next time.